I hate Mondays.
All right, I
Mondays.
think we're streaming again. I think everything should be working now. What, you expected things to actually work the first time? How you doing, guys? Say something so the chat room can know they can hear you.
Oh, hello.
Mm,
And hopefully we'll get people chatting again. I told them I'd be right back. They shouldn't have gone
yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah, sorry. I'm here because I gotta force myself to stay awake because I've learned the hard way that if I try to take a nap before I go to work, that just makes everything worse.
Yep.
Yeah.
They can do, people say, "Oh, I'll just grab a little bit of a nap," and then you're not refreshed. You're actually sluggish. All right. Well, I have
Yeah.
voices, but I don't have chat. Maybe no one's posted anything in the chat.
It's coming up.
Oh, okay. Maybe there's a lag again.
Yep, Inquisitor and Mo Excel's here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't see them on my end yet.
Oh.
So.
It's probably the classic delay, so.
Yeah, all right. Well, anyway, the purpose of this live stream is to do another one of those wonderful political quizzes because we always have so much fun with them. Only this is a real one. This is from Pew Research Center, and this is the actual questions that they send out when they're doing the surveys to people. So I'm still not seeing anything on my chat. And that you say they've posted to the chat?
Yeah. I'm reading them.
Okay, what do they say?
Just a second. Just a second. Okay, Inquisitor, aka Bradley McPhee, says greetings. Moxel says it's all good for me, and Inquisitor was commenting about me saying I'm tired, where he says in France they have a system in many restaurants where people get to sleep for 10 minutes.
I am not seeing any of that. All right. So if they don't start showing up on my end, you might have to let me know. Whoa. Okay. The noise from Clash's Pride there.
Oh, sorry. I muted myself, but I guess muting myself kind of makes a lot of noise.
Yeah.
I was muting myself from my microphone.
Well, make sure there's not a second microphone on your computer because a lot of times you mute the first one, it activates the second one. Okay, see, I should be seeing the chat by now. See, now the chat was working, but then you guys weren't coming through. Now you guys are working, but the chat isn't.
Did you try looking at your own video in a second window?
See, I don't like having that up because it screws with the bandwidth.
Now they're saying nothing.
Okay, I'm going to see. Yeah, I've got it up. I'm just going to see if I can pop out the chat. Okay, yeah, because
Inquisitor jokingly said, "Try deleting System 32."
Yeah, I'm seeing that now on my chat pop out. It's just not showing up in OBS, so we might have to read out important chats that we get. I'm just gonna give me a second to arrange it on my screen. Oh boy, isn't this typical of the things we have going on here? All right.
But yeah, Inquisitor, that is a good solution. I once had a computer that was experiencing a glitch and it wouldn't stop making that whining sound, so I deleted System 32 and now it's quiet. And I had to get a new computer. Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. If you delete System 32, you can fix it, but it's so complicated that most people say if you do that, you're better off just buying a new computer because
just reinstall Windows.
Yeah.
All right, shall we get going with this quiz finally? Now that we're 4 minutes into the second attempt at this live stream. Or should I start and restart again?
Nah, just keep going.
Just keep going? All right, well, just keep going.
Yeah, broken. Yeah, Sunk cost fallacy. We've already spent enough minutes on it. We might as well keep going through it.
All right, I'm going to hit take the quiz because here we have the political party quiz with the cute little diagrams of the elephant and the donkey. No porcupine in sight. Oh my God, how fail is this going to be? Place your bet.
Or a snake. Yeah, no porcupine. Let's make it a snake. The snake's more historically accurate and it's cooler.
Well, actually, the penguin has always been the traditional one that libertarians have chosen for themselves, but that's never the way it works. You know, the Democrats didn't choose the donkey, the Republicans didn't choose the elephant. It was pretty much the press that did that, and the press seems to be associating us with the porcupine because of the all the attention the Free State Project has got because they adopted that as their mascot. But it was actually cool that one time seeing the porcupine on CNN. So maybe they'll keep that up, or maybe they'll go right back to what they were doing all along. So place your bets. No eagles or owls from Invisible Hand. Yeah. Oh, now they're showing up on my. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know why it took them so long to show up on OBS. All right. First question. These are just 11 questions, so we might get through this rather quickly. If we do, don't fear. There's a second one we can do. But anyway. All right. Which statement comes closer to your own views, even if neither is exactly right? Now, if they have to put that in the question, that pretty much tells me that they know they've made a crappy quiz. So, all right. Business corporations make too much profit. Most corporations make a fair and reasonable amount of profit, or don't know. I mean, who decides what's too much or what's fair and reasonable? You know?
Yeah, you know. Well, I mean, the biggest problem, especially with today, is that because, you know, a lot of corporations are getting bailouts, it's difficult to tell, you know, which of their earnings was fairly earned and which of it was just a result of them lobbying.
Yeah, bailouts, corporate subsidies, regulatory capture, etc.
But the fact is, most corporations don't engage in that. I mean, the ones that get a lot of attention, like Exxon and Amazon, do. But, I mean, your local mom and pop restaurant, that's a corporation. So it says most corporations. You know. The vast majority, aren't doing that. So.
Yeah, you know, it's like people tend to not, just like how people don't know what the definition of capitalism is. A lot of people don't know what a corporation is. Like, they think that a corporation is this magical big building that appears when a bunch of people get a bunch of money. It's like, no, it's...
All right, so next question. All right. Problems in the world would be even worse without U.S. government. U.S. efforts to solve problems around the world usually ends up making things worse, or don't know. I mean, they're specifically talking about I'm assuming that they're talking about the U.S. government and not like, you know, individuals in the U.S., you know, reaching out to people, trading with people, buying from people, things like that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to assume with this question.
That's what they need to put there. They need to put U.S. government. I hate it when people ask, you know, it's like, do you think, you know, the U.S. or this country should get involved? It's like, well, what do you mean? Do you mean the people of the country or the government? Because if the people interact, well, yeah, they're free to do that. But if it's the government,
yeah. Grand Emperor Nathanos Housladen. So my brother who's libertarian says that Ecuador is an example of capitalism going too far and the fruit companies able to buy too much and buying mercenaries to take over the country, proving you need the government. How is Ecuador in any way capitalist? Before you go making claims like that, I would check out the Index of Economic Freedom.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm going to say they make things worse.
I mean, the Middle East is proof of that.
Yep. Hang on, what is this? Something just popped up here. Go away.
I mean, as we pointed out multiple times in old videos, historically, nobody took groups like ISIS or Al Qaeda seriously until the U.S. started bombing Iran and Iraq.
Okay, everyone, let me know if the sound levels are okay or if they're too big or too low. For those of you who missed the first aborted attempt at this live stream, this is all going on because of Microsoft's friggin' update last week, and it reset all my settings, and it's crazy. Yeah, Bradley McPhee, Ecuador is so socialist, it's not even funny. Oh yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and before anyone says he lives in the Bahamas, which is close to that area, so don't say, well, how do you know? You've never been down there.
Do you think?
I hate it when people.
Yeah.
I kind of hate it when people do that because it's like they say the same thing about Venezuela. They're like, well, how do you know socialism, is causing Venezuela to fail? You've never been down there, and I'm like, well, no offense to the intelligence of the people that live down there, but I'm pretty sure most people down in Venezuela don't really know the extent of their problem,
Oh, they know the extent of their problems, and they're quite vocal about them. Yeah. The idea that Venezuelans think they have a good they don't. They really don't. And this is the same sort of thing like, back in the 80s when you had people like Bernie Sanders and Paul Samuelson and stuff like that saying about how great things were in the Soviet Union. Notice how they didn't move to the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
In fact, the Soviet Union was trying to stop people from moving from there to America.
Actually, Shane, there was a lot of, when stuff was hitting the fan in Venezuela, I was seeing posts from all these, anti-Chavez and later anti-Maduro activists online who were from Venezuela. And when they heard all this, they were all going around saying, see, we told you guys, but you didn't listen.
Yeah. And Digicrat says, my mom knows how it was in Ukraine, late game and collapse. Yeah, the people who live there know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it was like a post on Instagram, and it was a socialist talking about how horrible capitalism is for the environment, et cetera, and they were just going on about how bad capitalism is in general. And then this guy from Brazil said, yeah, I live in one of the countries that you believe in, and it is a shithole here. And
yeah. And tell him to look up this little thing called the Kuznets curve.
And the funny thing is, the person replied to it just basically saying "shut up."
Yeah, that's the only response they have to it. The Kuznets curve, by the way, for people who don't know, I don't know if I've covered it on this channel or not, but if you have a completely primitive society, I mean, they're actually kind of nasty. They're polluting all over the place. They're drinking the same water they poo in, and cholera's everywhere. But the Kuznets curve doesn't actually look at that as an environmental issue. It's particularly looking at things like the industrial particulates that factories put in the air and CO2 emissions and things like that. And so the idea is a primitive society that has no industry is going to have very little of these. As you start getting more and more industrialized, that's going to go up. But as capitalism increases on that x-axis, it's going to go up. And then it starts going down once you hit a certain level of development. And this is exactly what we see in the world. The United States, Canada, all of these other developed countries are actually putting out very little pollution per capita. It's, China, India, Bangladesh, and all these other developing countries that are having to, just because of their point on the Kuznets curve.
That's why I'm confused as to why Manbear Pig appeared in America, because I'm like, what's he doing in America? He should be in China or India.
Well, South Park does take place in America, so they didn't have much choice about that. All right, question 3. Do you think it's the responsibility of the federal government to make sure all Americans have health care coverage? No. You can just have the first part of that question, and I'll just say no.
They already guarantee that all Americans get schooling, and we all seen how that turns out.
Do you strongly favor, oppose, or strongly oppose allowing gays and lesbians to marry legally? That'll be strongly favor.
I didn't hear that Fourth Root joined the chat and something happened in the background.
Hey, Fourth. Yeah, I heard some background noise.
I'm having a little audio trouble, so
Yeah, you're coming through very
I'll
faintly.
be that tributive for a minute.
Yeah, Root. You sound like you're. It sounds like you're watching the video of that cat that was going, "Oh no, 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 no."
He sounds like he's fallen down a well, is what it is.
Sounds like he's in a very dark room.
Yeah, so the gay thing, yeah, whatever, get married, Though I actually heard from one gay activist, who refuses to get married, and people are like, "Why won't you and your partner get married?" And he says, "Because why the hell do I want to go through? Do I want to get married through a process that was invented by the same people who historically hated and persecuted gays?"
Yeah. Well, I mean that's the thing. You have the marriage licensing system, which is complete crap. We need to end that.
Yeah, it's like,
I like what Doug Stanhope had to say about that. He's like, I've been in a lot of good relationships, but never one so good. I thought, hey, we need to get the government involved in this.
Yeah. I'm boosting your audio a little bit, Forth. Hopefully that'll help. Okay. Which statement comes closer to your own views? Government is doing too many things that would be better left if. You just stop with government is too many things. Government should do more to solve problems than don't. Government is doing way too many things.
Well, governments do solve a lot of problems. It's just that their solutions tend to be worse.
Yeah.
And usually the problems that they're trying to solve are caused by them anyway. So
the problems they're trying to solve are basically we don't have enough power and enough of the people's money. So how can we get that?
Yeah, kind of reminds
they're
me
pretty
of
good at that one.
Yeah, it reminds me of that old meme I saw a long time ago where it showed I think it was Obama saying, and he's saying, "Oh, you think this problem's bad? Wait till you see my solution."
Mm-hmm. That was a Groucho Marx joke.
Oh,
it was what was it? It was it was from Duck Soup when he was taking over Fredonia, and one of the lyrics was, "The country's taxes must be fixin'. I know what to do with them. If you think you're paying too much now, just wait till I get through with them." And there was another one that was similar. It was like, something's bad in this country, and I know what to do with it. If you think this country's bad off now, just wait till I get through with it. So that was just so great. Those movies were great. All right, which comes closer to your view about how to handle undocumented immigrants? Should not be allowed to stay here legally. Should be allowed to stay here legally. Leave them alone. Just leave them alone. Let them be.
Yeah, as long as they ain't forming rape gangs or just lazing around, yeah, leave them alone.
As long as they ain't hurting anyone.
Yeah.
Why would you care?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I was telling that to a lot of people, with the immigration they were talking about. Yeah, well, what about all those, rape gangs that occurred in Europe? And I'm like, the reason those are occurring is not because they legally allow people to come in. It's because they're not enforcing their own damn laws because they don't want to look racist.
I do have some gray in my beard, Evander. It might not be coming across on the live stream, but there's this one patch, like especially right over here. I'm starting to get like a tiny bit of gray on the sides, but yeah, almost 52. I'll be 52 tomorrow, and I think I'm doing pretty well on the gray and wrinkles front. So.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of modern day medicine. 50 years ago, if you were this age, you would look more like a 60-year-old or a 70-year-old.
Well, I mean, look at how many diseases you would have lived through, and how much bad nutrition you would have had, and stuff like that.
So, oh yeah.
I'm 50. I'm basically what someone in the 70s would have looked at me and said, "You're a 30-year-old."
Yeah.
And I mean, my mom's in her 80s. When I was growing up, if you were in your 80s, you were decrepit. You could only barely walk around with a cane, and you had to be. My mother's very active. When
you were a kid, if you were 80 years old, you were like a walking skeleton with skin on it, and you were in a wheelchair. And when you did talk, it was only to say, "Where am I? What's going on?" Like that.
So here's another
audio coming.
I juiced it up a bit, Fourth, and it's coming through. It still sounds like you're kind of talking in a well or something.
Well, I'm in my living room. I've got Elon and Owen here that I'm taking care of. Anyway, there was an interesting thing I wanted to bring up regarding how life expectancy is increasing in technology. I heard this in a tech talk. It was the concept of longevity escape velocity, because the rate at which the human lifespan is increasing. So at a certain point, we'll be able to increase the average length of the human lifespan by more than 1 year per year.
Yep.
And at that point, we can expect to effectively be immortal due to technology.
Well, I mean, I would expect us to hit a few speed bumps. I mean, you know, who the hell knows what health problems we'll have when we hit 300? You know, Alzheimer's and stuff like that was only that primitive people didn't know about that because they didn't live long enough to get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said, Shane, you know, a long time ago, everything goes to cancer. Everything eventually becomes cancer. So, contrary to what fantasy thinks, that if you were to cast a spell on you so you would live forever, you know, you wouldn't be like this young, beautiful person with maybe some white hair. Rather, you would be this giant mass of tumors.
All right, see, this next question is another example of one that's just really, really, you know, dumb. Because it says, which statement comes closer to your own views? This country has gone too far in its efforts to protect the environment. This country should do whatever it takes to protect the environment. What about this country is just doing the wrong things to protect the environment?
And again, what do they mean by country? Are they talking about the government or the people? Because with the government, they're going way too far because their solutions don't work. You know, as for individual people, you know, individuals are doing a good job of keeping the environment.
Well, let's get more nuclear power. Let's get rooftop solar. You know, let's do that stuff.
Well, the end-all solution for carbon's if carbon dioxide is the problem that we need to solve, then the obvious solution is to address it directly and impose a carbon tax, and then your incentives are aligned with actually reduced CO2 emissions. But for some reason, the left won't like that. Like they'll say, "Oh, that would be great, but it'll never happen. We're going to do all these other things." Wait a minute.
But with the carbon tax, you've got a calculation problem because how do you set the tax?
Yeah.
And you've got the problems you have with every other Pigothian tax.
Well, I mean, it's certainly not. It is the best. I'm not saying that I'm saying it's better than every other solution that is proposed. I mean, even like if you were to subsidize nuclear power, that would not be as economically correct or at least you're aligning the incentives with your goals. That's the value of the carbon. And it can be done without creating a burdensome new tax. You could do it by shifting the income tax onto a carbon. Yes, you are presented with the problem with how high should that tax be, but you know that problem exists with all other solutions. You know how big it's basically the question.
Oh no, it exists with all other government solutions. It doesn't exist with market solutions because markets use the price mechanism, which is a lot better.
The problem stems from the question: how big of a problem for the planet is global warming, which can't really be solved with the market solution because there's one world and everybody lives in it, and we can't.
I don't think so because
we can't
because the most efficient form of power is nuclear power, which is zero carbon. And before it scrolls off the top, hold on a second. Before it scrolls off the top, DigiCraft says eternal life is eternal suffering. I don't get how you conclude that, given that the fact that the people who live in their 80s today are a lot happier than the people who lived in their 80s, back in the 1970s or whatever. as we increase the lifespan, we're also increasing happiness.
Right. Eliezer Yudkowsky has addressed that fallacy many times. He basically sums it up. I am glad to be alive today. I can expect to be glad to be alive tomorrow. So long as I'm glad to be alive, I should be allowed to stay alive.
Well, they did a survey where they a lot of elderly people, they surveyed them and asked them what the best decades of their life was and when they were the happiest, what the best were. And like the best decades was the 70s, the second best was the 60s, the third best was the 50s, and so forth, all the way down.
Yep. I can confirm, I can kind of sort of confirm that contrary to popular belief, your 20s is not your best decade because, people think, oh yeah, when I'm in my 20s and 30s, I'll be a grown up and I'll be big and strong. It's like, yeah, and you'll also be struggling, figuring out what you're going to be doing and working a bunch of low-end jobs because you're inexperienced and you don't know what you want to do with your life.
Yeah, but there are a lot of fun opportunities you have in your 20s too, so don't get blinded to those. But just, I think no matter what decade you are, there's the good things and the bad things about it. But the thing is, the longer you live, you kind of get better at living, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So people always say, if I could be in my 20s, but have the brain I have today, have the mind I have today with the knowledge and experience of it, because that's what it is. It's not so much what's happening to your body, it's what's happening to your mind.
And I apparently spoiled the Highlander movie to Stan Olch.
Oh.
Yeah, because he's like, even the Highlander got sick of being immortal, and I'm like, well, I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but if I recall correctly, wasn't the great prize for being the surviving Highlander was you got to be mortal so you could actually enjoy your life, instead of, always constantly, having to look over your shoulder or whatever.
And the problem is you were the only immortal, which means that everyone, this is what they do in all the stories about immortality. It's the lonely immortal, and everyone they've loved has died and they're turning away from humanity and things like that. But if everyone becomes immortal together, and longevity increases as it's done now, that wouldn't be the issue.
So. Yeah, not the mental fact that complete, it's fictional evidence.
All right. Abortion should be legal in all cases. We've discussed that one to death, I think.
Though I don't support it. And
well,
I'm sorry, but
the question was about legality, whether not morality.
I know. I get into that argument all the time because when I tell people I think abortion should be legal, they're like, "Oh, so you support killing babies?" So I'm like, I don't, and personally, unless you and my personal moral opinion is that unless you have a pretty legit medical reason to get one, you shouldn't go through with it. But as we've seen from the past, making it illegal doesn't work, and if anything, can lead to a lot of problems.
And,
it
actually makes it worse.
I would say that in a case where the is viable, perhaps the correct. I could understand a law that says no, you can't abort the fetus. You can have it removed from your uterus, but you can't just kill it.
Well, I mean, we've gone over this before. If it were a case where you could instantly and safely teleport the fetus out of the mother's womb into an incubator, then yes, it will be wrong to kill the fetus. But, we're
I can
not
also understand, at a certain point, I can understand the argument that you have certain moral obligations other people for, let's say the procedure was, for the abortion and the delivery were exactly the same, except for one cost just a tiny insignificant amount more. Is it acceptable to require that they burden that other cost, or that slightly higher cost, that very, very slightly? I could understand the argument that it.
It kind of, this kind of reminds me of this cringy thing I was reading. This one guy was reading like these cringy SJW and third wave feminist tales, and one of them was from a third wave feminist who said, who's pregnant, and she says, I'm getting my first ultrasound today, so I get to see if I'm gonna have a baby girl or an abortion. And I'm like, whoa, you better be kidding there, because if you're gonna abort your baby just because it's not the gender you want, then I'm questioning your motives as a parent. In fact, if it is going to be a boy and you decide not to abort it, I would probably contact CPS on you.
I wouldn't
Speaking of
contact
kids,
CPS because they generally are a lot worse than whatever you figure the
yeah.
parent would be doing.
Yeah.
Well,
If
That's
you
the-
want the kid to be passed around from one group of pedophiles to the next, then yes, by all
Yep.
means, call CPS.
It's like I've been through 2 foster families. The first one was a pedophile, and the second one was an uber religious one that would slap me in the face if I mispronounce Jesus's name.
Yeah. All right, Muslims living in the U.S. should not be subject to additional scrutiny solely because of their religion. We have this thing called the First Amendment. Also, there should be this thing called impartiality under the law.
Yeah.
People are not their groups.
Go.
They're the individuals, and they're responsible for their own actions and not anyone else's.
Yeah. I will say
And
this, you know what I like about this question is that it refers to Muslims as a religion and not as a race like a lot of SJWs like to do. It's like if someone says something anti-Islam, they're like, you're a racist. It's like, no, that's religious prejudice, not racial prejudice. It's
But I mean, when you look at a lot of what they want to do, like a lot of the profiling and everything, it's pretty clear that when they say Muslims, they're really talking about Arabs, because most Muslims in the world are actually in like Indonesia and places like that, and they're Asian, not Arab, but they're always talking about Arabs when they talk about all the restrictions.
Yeah, if you want to be a Muslim, whatever. As long as you don't try to enforce Sharia law on me, I don't care.
I was actually going to reference the fact that it is mostly in Southeast Asia where most of the Muslims are, but you beat me to it.
And there's also a huge amount in sub-Saharan Africa.
There's a lot of Muslims in Southeast Asia.
All right, so let's see. Having an increasing number of different races, ethnic groups, and nationalities in the U.S. makes this country a better place to live, worse place to live. Doesn't make much difference either way, and don't know. I'm just going to say it doesn't make much difference. I mean, people are people. It's probably better if we have, especially with our children, when they're associating with people of different races, because I'm sorry, I do not believe this crap about us naturally being racist and we have to be taught differently. When you have kids and like little children on a playground, and there are white kids and there are black kids and there are Asian kids, what do? They all play together and they're happy.
Yeah.
That's the natural state of mankind.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
And
Maybe
just
in
looking
some
at it-
ways it's probably a better place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go that way.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny, Shane, because we kind of see that, with the whole, they're a lot of people are trying to say, well, kids can be transsexual now, and what you're often seeing is, like there's been studies shown that, children of certain genders do naturally, tend to lead towards, more stuff. Like for instance, girls tend, there's just a trend for them to want to play with dolls, and boys want to play with things like trucks and whatnot. And what you actually see is the parents who are saying kids can be transsexual too is basically not letting their kids choose their toys for them. They're saying I'm gonna buy trucks for my girls, and I'm gonna make my boy play with dolls. It's like, well, if you bought trucks and dolls and left them there for both of them and they had a choice, I'm not against that. But the fact that you're forcing your kid to play with a specific toy, it's like that's just cruel, man.
And excuse me, Stan, I have 4 kids. I see them play. I know how they are. They don't care unless they're taught to care. Otherwise, they don't care what skin color you are or anything.
And also looking at it at an economic standpoint, I would say that it's actually a better place to live, just because there are more niches that people can fill.
Yeah.
And more markets that pop up.
Well, I think the reason why we should say it doesn't make much difference either way is not because we're pessimistic and we think, oh, we're all screwed no matter what happens. Rather, it's because, as Shane says, despite what BuzzFeed likes to rant about, the best way to end racism isn't to acknowledge your race; it's to forget about it. If people ask you, what it's like being black, you just say, I don't know. It's just my skin color.
Yeah, I mean, people are individuals, but at the same time, having, an increased, diversity of backgrounds and thoughts and opinions and things like that. That gives you more to draw from. So, yeah, I'm kind of leaning. I think Better Place to Live.
There is one caveat that if the increase,
you're breaking up, Fourth.
If the, I'm stammering. If the diversity, being diversity of the opinion, in the sense that you have most groups who are on board with having diversity and diversity of opinion, introduce another group who does not tolerate diversity of opinion, that does create conflict.
Hey, Fourth Root, is that your kid?
Yeah, that's Elon making all the noise.
Oh, you named him after Elon Musk. That's nice of you.
Sure did.
Yeah, for some reason, people nowadays are going after Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos because reasons.
He put people on the space station, which is something NASA hasn't been able to do for something like 9 years. That automatically makes him awesome in my book. I don't care what else he does at that point. Maybe the Hyperloop will work, maybe it won't, maybe his other things will fail. He put people on the space station with a private company. Booyah.
Yeah.
Done. That's it.
Yeah,
that's his life right there.
Yeah.
He lowered the cost of going to space by an order of magnitude already. So,
in all honesty, all this criticism of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, most of it comes to just petty jealousy. It's like a lot of people who are talking about negatively about them, they sound like the same type of people like, well, I could have formed Amazon if I wanted to, but I didn't because I'm not a jerk or something like that.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah, they're all in their teens except for one who's about to be in her teens. So yeah. I know about the conflicts, but the conflicts are not racial unless you make them that. That was my point.
Yeah. Well, sadly, Sinclair, your son has, autism, so I don't know what mental maturity he's at, but
yeah, that he's kind of a different but there's the 3 girls, so.
No, you got 3 dogs. You got other kids, huh? I thought you only had 2.
Well, I have 2 and Heather has 2. Heather actually has 3, but her third's already grown, and she lives in Arizona. I haven't had a chance to meet her yet. All right. The economic system of this country is generally fair to most Americans. The economic system of this country unfairly favors powerful interests and don't know. Well,
it's wrong to think about economic systems as being fair, or should they even be structured around the concept of fairness? I would argue that they shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, who decides what's fair and what isn't? That's the problem.
Well, as cynical as it is to say, there is some truth, to when your parents say, life isn't fair. Granted, they could teach in a more positive light, but the better way to put it is that, despite what you think, not everyone is going to be born with the same advantages as each other. You're going to have advantages and disadvantages, and it's all about figuring out a way around them and whatnot.
But it is true that the politics of this country makes it so that the powerful interests get, so much more, money and land and things like that the people did not give them voluntarily. That's what I would say is unfair.
Yeah, that's why I'm stuck delivering pizzas.
Yeah.
There is merit in striving to produce a certain amount of fairness and quality in equality of opportunity.
I just like saying impartiality. I like that word a lot better than fairness or equality.
Yeah, impartiality is a much better way to.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Shane, I'm on the verge. I'm on the verge of just saying screw it all and starting my own political party called the Bullshit Party. Sheet as in SHEET.
Yeah.
I'll be the next Vermin Supreme.
All right, let's see how I did. Let's see. I am a moderate Democrat, according to Pew.
Yeah.
Well, that's the funny irony is that, people always like to ask, like our libertarians, Democrat or Republican, and some people often say we're a little bit of both. We're Republican when it comes to economic policies, but we're Democratic when it comes to social policies.
Well,
The only
others
they
will
always
say
do
that
this
liberals-
like left-right thing, and they always say like most people are centrists. And the conclusion they take from that is that, well, people like a little bit from the Republicans and they like a little bit from the Democrats. What if the reality is they hate both of them and they don't like any of the things that either party has to offer?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so often I hear, and I hate hearing, is that libertarians are ultra conservatives. They're like way to the right of the Republicans.
Well, and the
I mean,
the funny thing is that lately and arguably even historically, the Republicans have never been, conservative when it comes to government wise.
And according to them, my age is more like a 17-year-old. I'm not sure what to make of that.
Yeah.
But it's just to the right of 18 through 29. Just to the left, sorry, of 18 through 29.
And here's the thing, Shane. Yeah, here's actually the thing, Shane, that I've read. Apparently, from what I've heard, the political compass was bullcrap right from its very beginning. It was basically invented by the Robespierre French revolutionaries, basically to divide people, basically saying, "Oh no, they're on our side, they're on this side, right wing evil, left wing good," basically.
Yeah, hey, I'm much more.
For the rest of this, I think for the rest of this, you got to talk like a teenager.
Well, totally, because like on this next one, see, totally, I'm like much more
teenager.
I'm not with it. I'm much more of a woman than women are, according to this, because I am way more.
Yeah.
Apparently, you're Hispanic, according to the to this quiz as well.
No, I'm black.
Oh, you're black?
It puts me right there, right next to black.
Yeah.
And what religion am I? I am halfway between unaffiliated and black Protestant.
So that means you believe that white man is the devil, and that if you sin, Jesus is going to smite you with his might. Yeah, I've seen videos of some of those black Protestant preachers, and oh my god, it's like they're freaking crazy, Like, I mean, granted, most of them aren't racist and don't say the white man's the devil, but they are crazy, Jesus saved people, and he'll save you too. And if you reject him, you'll be struck down with holy hellfire lightning.
Yeah,
that's mostly just like Baptists and Methodists in general, though.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a black femboy. I'm a black teenage femboy or something. I guess according to them.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. I'm having fun. Should we do the next one?
All you're missing now is a pink skirt, a biker leather jacket, and you need to be at a bar flirting with straight white guys.
Because they've got this next one. Where do you fit in the political typology? Are you a core conservative, a solid liberal, somewhere in between? Take our quiz to find out. I wonder how many
speaking of being gay, I saw the music video for the famous song "Relax," right?
Mm-hmm.
I saw the original music.
Don't do it. That one. When you
I saw the original music video, and it's literally gay. That's what it is. It's about the lead singer, who apparently is gay in real life, going to a gay bar.
All right, let's see. The government should do more to help. Well, just the first 5 words, the government should do more, kind of pooches it. Even if it means going deeper to that, or government can't afford to. I guess I'll do the second.
I mean, it's not the fact that they can't afford it. They can just print money, but
it doesn't work.
The fact is that, yeah, I know, but I'm saying that cynically they can just print money forever and devalue our currency, but
government is always wasteful and inefficient. There we go. That's a little more like it. The best way to ensure peace is through military strength, or good diplomacy is the best way to ensure. Of course, it's diplomacy.
Yeah.
It's free trade.
Yeah, let's waste our resources fighting people instead of trying to resolve our differences peacefully.
Yes, people, don't make General Curtis LeMay your LeMay, your foreign ambassador. You know who Curtis LeMay is, right, Shane?
Nope.
He's largely responsible for why we dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, because even though Japan was more or less defeated by 1945, LeMay was like, "Oh no, we gotta bomb them. We gotta bomb them till Japan's a giant crater."
Yeah. Okay.
He was also the one that said Kennedy should have bombed Cuba when the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred.
Oh my gosh! Imagine if he actually did that.
Yeah, it would have been war. It would have been nuclear war.
Yeah.
But Kennedy said, no. Let's figure out a way to get Khrushchev on the phone. I'll talk to him myself. And they worked it out.
Yeah. If we would have bombed Cuba, then the Russians would have bombed Turkey. Then we would have declared war on Russia. Russia would have declared war on us. And after a couple of years of a traditional war, both one side or the other would say, fuck this, and just launch everything.
Oh, it probably wouldn't even have been a couple of years. It would probably been a lot faster than that.
It probably would have been like a couple months.
That's why if I become president under the bullshit party platform, my first rule, and this is going to be the biggest one, is have all of America's ICBMs disassembled and replace their nuclear warheads with giant glitter bombs.
Okay, bad question coming up. There's only two options on this. Racial discrimination is the main reason why many black people can't get ahead these days, or black people who can't get ahead in this country are mostly responsible for their own condition. What if I don't think it's either of those? What if I think it's government
discrimination in the government?
Yeah, what if well, not even so much as racial discrimination, just bad economic policy and the war on drugs and things like that.
Yeah. And also the way America runs schools and forces, a lot of black kids
into failing schools. Yeah.
Inquisitor wants to know if we believe that Kennedy was assassinated by the FBI. No, he wasn't.
Nope. No.
Yeah.
Oswald was alone. How many ways does it have to be proven? Every single theory that the conspiracy people put up has been independently tested, by forensic experts, and every single one of them fail, and the only one that passes is a single gunman from the bug depository.
Yeah. And here's another thing too, Shane, is that a lot of people love to say, it had to be the CIA because of Kennedy's response to the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's like, it is true that he stopped the Cuban Missile Crisis, but that doesn't mean he was pro-peace. I mean, he was all for, expanding America's involvement in Vietnam and other places in the world. So this idea that he was killed by hawks and the CIA because he was a pacifist is bullshit.
Daniel, I know I've taken Politiscale, search the channel. I think I took 9 Axes. I think I took that one. All right, I'm going to do the racial discrimination one because it is. Those policies are discriminatory, even if they're not intended to be. But it's government. Especially
the drug war.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the funny irony, Shane, is that a lot of TV shows that portray, the American South in the 1950s and 60s, they like to portray, as everyone in the South, who's white being a racist, but apparently, according to people that actually grew up in those time periods, it wasn't really that racist, and most people who were racist generally were more moderate and basically, said, I don't like them, but I'll put up with them, and that the real racial extremists were actually the government, not the individual people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean...
Oh, yeah. My grandma, my father's mother, she was born in 1900, and I don't think that woman had the capability to hate anyone, and she didn't have a racist bone in her body. And just sweet old woman.
From what I've read, most people back during that time weren't really racist, and even if they were, it wasn't like, they were going around saying, I hate N-words, N-words are the worst. It was more of, like I said, like a general discomfort, but not like enough that they'd still do business with them,
But I think there'd be like little patches of areas somewhere where like there was this one, like they'd be like the small town or something somewhere where everyone in there was just so hideously racist. So you'd have probably little patches like that, but it wouldn't be representative of the whole South.
Yeah, it's just...
Yeah.
All right, government regulation of business is necessary to protect the public interest. Government regulation of business does more harm than good. Well, that's an easy one. homosexuality should be accepted by society, or homosexuality should be discouraged by society. How about nobody should care one way or the other? Let
Yeah,
people live their lives.
That's
I
another-
guess that would be accepted in a sense of the word.
That's Shane, that's another thing that I hate about a lot of social justice, movements and all that is like people are like, well, how come, libertarians aren't for social justice? Don't they want people to be treated the same? It's like, no, we just want to make a big deal about it. That's the problem, is that social justice warriors want to make a big deal out of it. Like if you're black, gay, or whatever, they want you to publicly display it. It's like, no, it's just, who cares? It's kind of like the guy that used to do Elmo, when it was revealed he was gay, everyone was like, "Oh my god, you were gay? Why didn't you tell anyone?" And his response was, because it was nobody's business. Yeah.
I remember when people found out he was black. That was funny. Elmo was
Yeah.
black. Kevin Clash, yeah.
Kevin Clash. Kevin Clash. Everyone thought that, Elmo's voice actor was like a scrawny white woman, but no, it's this big black. It was this big black guy.
Oh, he's a hunky guy. He's buff. He
jokingly said, I saw an interview with him. It was behind the scenes of the Dinosaurs movie, and he said, it's so funny. Every time I visit people, doing Elmo or Baby Sinclair, they're like, dude, you're really the voice actor's like, yep. They're like, dude, you shouldn't be voicing puppets. You should be an NFL linebacker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Which statement comes closest? Business corporations make too much profit. Let's go. Okay, we did this question before. It was in the other one. We didn't like the fair and reasonable language, but we kind of went with that.
Too much profit. I mean, and it's a corporation. It's a whole bunch of people. So how could you have too much profit if you don't even define how many people make up that corporation earning money together?
Yeah.
Hey, just random question. Or how old is your kid?
Elon is just over 2 years. Owen is 6 months now.
Oh, that's why he's loud. He's in his terrible twos.
The threes are worse. I'm going to go ahead and let you know that.
Yeah.
People say the terrible twos, and then they turn 3, and you think, well, I made it through the terrible twos. Your troubles are just beginning.
Because one person jokingly told me the reason why they act terrible when they're 2 years old is because they're still kind of stuck in that baby mentality, so they're just learning. When they're 3, they kind of have a grasp that they know what they're doing, so they're going to be trying to push your button, basically.
Yeah. Well, that's when they're testing the limits. They're figuring out.
My stepson is in his terrible 13, so there's that.
Well, I actually read somewhere that said the reason why so many people have a problem with their teenagers is actually largely because parents are basically, it's like they want their kids, it's like they want their kids to have more responsibility and whatnot, but they don't actually give them, the rewards for being responsible. It's like, you're gonna, do this and that. It's like, oh, well, if I do good, can I go to Timmy's party? No, you can't go to Timmy's party. I don't like him. It's like, then why should they have an incentive to do good? If they're not rewarded for, for being responsible or whatnot, then what's the incentive to do that? That's why they rebel and act like that, because they're in their mind, they're thinking, what's the point?
Okay, so after skipping a couple of questions that are the same ones that we had in the previous quiz, we get another bad one. Only 2 options. Poor people today have it easy because they can get government benefits without doing anything in return, or poor people have hard lives because government benefits don't go far enough to help them live decently.
Poor people live better today because of capitalism.
Yeah.
How about poor people have hard lives because government gives them too many benefits?
Yeah, when I was in middle school and high school, there were plenty of kids, in some of the classes I went to that came from poor families. They lived in the trailer parks and whatnot, but yet they still had a cell phone, TV, and a game console. Which goes to show how far we've come.
I don't know how many times I have to explain to why something like a negative income tax would be much better than a welfare program, because the welfare program, you get welfare if you don't have a job, so it disincentivizes you from getting a job.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah, John Stossel was actually interviewing people on an episode of Welfare, and he actually came across one guy who got it right, saying, I believe the government is doing too much on welfare, and they asked him, really, how do you know that? It's like, because I know from growing up, because my mom, never got a better job or worked to improve her life, because because if she worked to improve her life, she'd be making less money than what she would have made with the welfare. So she was constantly stuck in a crappy job because, she didn't want to lose her welfare benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, as the old saying goes, trying to fix poverty with welfare is like trying to cure heroin addiction by giving the person heroin.
I mean, I really don't know which one to pick. Poor people do have it better today than they have by every objective standard, but it's not because of government benefits.
You wrote a bad question, Pew.
And you should feel bad. I guess.
I was
think
quoting Fantastic Mr. Fox. Yeah.
At least the first one is half right.
Yeah.
Whereas
the second one is just.
The second one is
bad.
all wrong.
Yeah, this sounds like something that would come out of my high school history textbook, where pretty much what they teach you in high school history is the government invented the wheel, discovered electricity, and is responsible for the creation of the universe.
Another bad one from the last one about the economic system. Okay, our country has made the changes needed to give black people equal rights with white people, or our country needs to continue making changes to give black people equal rights. I mean...
Well, what changes are they referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
if we're talking about things like repealing, getting rid of the drug war, abolishing stuff like that,
and getting rid of minimum wage and all that.
Abolish affirmative action.
Yeah,
abolish affirmative action.
Yeah, that's the funny irony. There are laws that are keeping blacks down, but they're the laws that the left doesn't want to acknowledge. It's like if we want blacks, to be just as rich and prosperous as white people, one of the first things we need to do is get rid of, all those, labor laws from the eugenics era, which, contrary to what your teachers told you, were actually invented to keep black and, to a lesser extent, immigrant workers from competing with WASP Americans.
But I mean, they are saying equal rights, not equal opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to put it there. For those that don't know, WASP means White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. Another bad question.
Contrary to popular belief, a lot of people in the Deep South weren't just racist towards blacks. If you were an Irish Catholic or a German Jew, you were seen as no better than them, and in some cases, you were seen as inferior.
Actually, it was pretty much Germans. So the South traditionally has been pretty okay with Jews.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at the Jews in the South, they just kind of live in various different places, whereas in New York, which was historically very anti-Semitic, that's the places where they formed the Jewish communities. Yeah. Just I guess out of either kind of they don't want to live around the racist, or they couldn't get opportunities.
I read a history about German Americans, and it's actually kind of sad because everyone likes to talk about all the evils we did to the blacks, yet the atrocities that the U.S. government did to the German Americans is often overlooked. I mean, here's a fun fact: German Americans were concentrated alongside the Japanese during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the government still denies this. And there are people who are alive today that have been affected by it, and they had their money and property taken away from them. And every time they bring it up, the government's like, "What? We didn't do that, you silly guys. Everyone knows that only happened to the Japanese. You're silly."
Okay, here's another vague one that doesn't specify if it's talking about people or government. It is best for the future of our country to be active in world affairs, or we should pay less attention to problems overseas and concentrate on problems here at home.
Well, what do they mean? Do they mean the people or the government? Because, because I mean, here's the thing: if a company goes out and does trade with another country, that's often benefiting them. I mean, that's another problem. Is people say, "Oh, but without government, how are we going to get world trade and all that?" People are going to do it naturally.
Well, I think it's safe to assume that this question is specifically referring to political conflicts overseas, which I agree the government should completely stay out of.
Yeah. The chat is going back by way too fast for me to catch all of that, so I apologize for that. Okay, most people who want to get ahead can make it if they're willing to work hard, or hard work and determination are no guarantee of success for most people. I mean, no one said it was a guarantee.
Though
Yeah.
the government, though nowadays, because of what the government's been doing, it's next to impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, because, you know, I mean, I've actually heard from a lot of people that said even a long time ago, if your first business didn't work, it wasn't the end of the world, you know, and if you still worked hard, you could still pick yourself up now, you know, and get back to work. But
Well,
today,
look,
if you fail hard.
Look at how many businesses Harlan Sanders made that failed. Some that were his fault and some that weren't. But wasn't he like 65 when he finally founded Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
Milton Hershey, you know, he had like four candy companies that he founded that went broke before he finally, you know, successfully made it in made it in the chocolate business, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty much impossible to create any economic system by which hard work doesn't give you, or working hard doesn't give you an advantage. The question is, you know, what does the economic system incentivize?
Yeah.
Well, the
And
question
hard
is,
work.
how much of a benefit are you giving to other people?
Yeah.
That's the question. If you're giving them enough of a benefit that they're willing to give you money, then that's a success.
On a random question, Root, here's something I have to say. Hey, Mrs. Root, get your woman butt back in here and take care of the baby. The men are talking. I'm kidding, but
Right.
yeah.
This one's actually pretty easy, believe it or not. The obstacles that once made it harder for women than men to get ahead are now largely gone, or there are still significant obstacles. If you look at, because they like to aggregate things without like breaking it down. If you break it down and you look at women by their age demographic, the ones in their 20s and 30s today, if anything, are doing a bit better than men are. The ones who are older, of course, are the ones who didn't have as many opportunities when they were younger. But, I mean, unless you want to make a time machine, you can't go fix that. But, yeah. So, if anything, things are slightly tilted the other way.
Yep, and, well, you know, and here's another thing that a lot of, you know, feminists, you know, I mean, seem to constantly ignore is that feminism should be about choice. And here's the thing, ladies, if you see a woman, you know, who wants to live, you know, a conservative thing and she wants to be a submissive housewife and let her husband make all the major decisions, that's her choice too.
Oh, a lot of them like
And believe it or
Anita Sarkeesian and Brianna Wu have come straight out and said this has nothing to do with what individual women want. But then what's the
Yeah.
purpose of it? Well, the purpose of it is they're really Marxists and they're trying to force collectivism on everyone.
In all honesty, Shane, I kind of agree with what you said. I think what we should do is we should just, people, if you legitimately care about women's rights, drop the word feminism and simply make your movement an individualist movement, and instead make it about individual choices regardless of sex, you know.
Oh,
You know-
here's another bad one. In foreign policy, the U.S. should take into account the interests of its allies, even if it means making compromises with them. Or, in foreign policy, the U.S. should follow its own national interests, even when its allies strongly disagree.
Well, with the first statement, that's the reason why the Soviet Union took over half of Europe after World War II. And for the second reason, that's why the U.S. is basically isolated in its war on terrorism, because initially, after 9/11, many nations, including ones that historically didn't get along with the U.S., felt sympathy, and they were saying, hey, we'll do whatever it takes, you know, to help track down the group that was responsible for the Twin Towers. But when the U.S. started bombing everything, they're like, you know what, we changed our mind, you know, you guys are crazy.
Yeah. What about, you know, open friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none, which is what this country was founded on. They don't have the very thing this country was founded on as an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you absolutely have to go to war, make the war strictly with the enemy nation. You know, don't bomb surrounding nations because, oh, they're in our way. We got to get them out of the way.
Or we need a buffer zone or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm gonna hit the first one because that's
And here's
slightly
another thing
more
that I
reasonable, at least.
And here's another thing that I also tell people, a lot, when we talk about wars and all that. Also, if you have to absolutely go to war the same way as you would with self-defense. Once the party you're going to war with, is no longer a threat, stop. Don't
Yep.
say, okay, we need to counterattack and we need to march on their capital and force them to sign a treaty that says for the next 20 years, they're our butt slave. No, don't do
No.
that. That's
You
only gonna.
you whack them until they stop attacking you, and then you go, dude, what the hell, man? And you try and
Yeah.
talk to them, figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, if you do what I said, if you say, well, we got to counterattack and go into their capital, all you're gonna do is just you'll sign a peace treaty, but people are still gonna be mad at you for marching in and destroying their capital.
And now, question 17 of 17. I'm triggered now. Do you consider yourself Democrat, Republican, or Independent? No other options. They're not even other.
Yeah.
Yeah, no green, no libertarian, no constitution.
Yeah.
It reminds
Just
me. It reminds me.
independent.
It reminds me of this one Aqua Teen Hunger Force episode where Frylock gets trapped, by the internet wizard who offers him, a deal with to use this really crappy and bug-ridden, program, and the options are yes and no, and he clicks no, but it turns out that the guy was obscuring a part of the deal. The first question was, yes, I want the program, install it immediately, and the only other option was, no, I don't want it right now, but install it within 90 days.
The voice chat cannot see me face palming. What happened was I clicked independent, and then another question popped up underneath of saying,
Yeah,
well,
I
do
see
you
it.
lean more towards the Democrat or the Republican? I don't like either of them. I
So-
wish they both would disappear from the face of the earth and stop bothering the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
I think they're both evil sociopaths who just need to go away. And let the rest of us live our lives in peace.
Yeah, it's really funny, Shane, is that America used to have a pretty wider range of political parties. Like there used to be the Whig Party, the Know Nothing Party, and various other ones. But then after the Civil War, the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party basically annexed all the other parties into one, and basically made it so only Republicans or Democrats are allowed to take control.
Well, also, the
so I-
Democrats kept the southern states under martial law and basically stopped. Basically, every politician in the South had to be a Democrat, the other way around. They had to be a Republican, and so they all basically allied in the Democrats to have a united front against them. So,
Yeah.
Now, I am going to click on lean more towards Republican solely because there are a few Republicans that do have the right, do have a lot of things right, but they still need work on
I mean,
some things.
mean-
For example, I live in the 9th Congressional District of Georgia. One of the people who are running for my congressional district for the Georgia House is Matthew Gertler, and I always sing his praises, and he's just a great candidate overall, and he's a Republican, but that's not really what matters. It's about his ideas.
In recent years, I think the Republican Party has swung a lot more libertarian, Democratic, a lot more authoritarian. Look at much more Republicans are supportive of marriage equality now, and a lot of Republicans now are supportive of at least marijuana legalization.
mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
at least medical legalization.
Well, I was about to say, here's another thing too. There's a lot of people that like to say, that like to rant on libertarians and say, well, if you libertarians hate the U.S. government so much, why don't you try to get involved and change it? And I'm like, well, here's the thing: there are you know, granted, they're not libertarian parties because, you know, it's next to impossible to get in there, but there are people in both the Republican and even the Democratic Party who are true libertarians, and they've said, you know, we've tried to bring it up, and what usually happens is the rest of Congress or the Senate basically says, yeah, whatever, just go sit down and don't talk.
Yeah, but I think
That's
it is the
basically
case.
it.
It does seem to be that the Republicans are becoming more moderate and the Democrats are becoming a lot more Marxist.
And then 30 years from now, it's going to be the reverse because something like,
Yep.
because that's kind of what happened 100 years ago. The Republican Party came very close to becoming America's first socialist party, and the Democrats were the ones saying, no, we can't do that.
Or even just 40 or 50 years ago when the Democrats were all about, you know, freedom of speech and everything else, and the Republicans were the moral majority wanting to force everyone to be Christian and everything. You know, the pendulum swings.
Yeah.
Yep, and actually another thing we tend to also see is you know, is in many cases the Republicans and Democrats, you know, start, you know, initially like the same thing, but one of them splinters off when they see how unpopular it is. A perfectly good example is the war in Iraq. You know, the majority of Democrats, if I recall correctly, were for going to war with Iraq, and it wasn't until they noticed it was becoming unpopular that they said, "Oh yeah, we never liked the war in Iraq. You know, we're on your side."
So it says I am a core conservative, along with 13% of the public.
You are, according to these two quizzes, you are leaning slightly to the left, and you're also a core conservative.
Yeah.
Which in all honesty, that's kind of sort of what libertarians are, because like we said, you know, libertarians, you know, are, you know, we're uber conservative when it comes to monetary issues, but when it comes to social issues, we're uber liberal. So
All right, so it says this overwhelmingly Republican group holds conservative attitudes across a wide range of issues, especially in their support for smaller government. Core conservatives are deeply skeptical of the social safety net and favor lower tax rates on corporations and high-income individuals.
no,
While they are
tax rates on everyone.
Well, yeah, taxation is theft, but while they are divided on what they didn't ask us that though. While they are divided on whether immigrants do more to strengthen or burden the country, core conservatives offer far more positive views of immigrants than do country first conservatives. Core conservatives are relatively upbeat about national conditions, and a majority says that the United States stands above all nations in the world. And then somewhere down here, there's a graph, a distribution of ideological placement, and a 10-item scale. I'm very slightly to the right of mixed. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's another one of my campaign promises. If elected president, I'll have the head of the IRS be arrested for theft. Yeah. And then when he's out of the picture, next stop is the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is not a private company, people. Why does everyone say it's a private company?
Yeah, I got a video on that. Well, that's it for the dumb quizzes.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I mean, it just goes to show how, you know, the opinions are being shaped. People who have differing opinions are just being shut out of the conversation. You know, if you're not in the little dichotomy that the news media puts you in, then you're just not covered. You don't exist.
Yeah.
There's no room for nuance.
Grand Emperor wants to know, what about the power vacuum problem? That's just a fallacy. That's just a fallacy that statists like to use. And I think there was one person that said, when we see this whole power vacuum thing, it's not because, contrary to popular belief, it's not because, the king is dead and now random people are trying to seize the throne. Rather, it's, the king is dead and the people who used to work for the king want, a monarch back in power, but they can't agree on who should be the successor. That's what causes, civil wars and whatnot.
And you also have people who are looking at the person they want to put in power and go, wait a minute, I'm going to get a raw deal under that. And so then they try to put their own person in power to try and defend against that.
Yeah,
But the problem is that the state power exists to begin with.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. By the way, Shane, this is just a little random thing, but I was talking, about, communism versus fascism, and one person even said, "Oh, but the communists were some of the first opponents of the Nazis." Well, no, they weren't. And here's another interesting thing I learned is that most German groups, within Europe, they used to be, originally like the pre-war government, but what happened is that the communists infiltrated and they basically kicked all the non-communists out, basically.
It was pretty much the liberal Democrats were the real big first opposition to the Nazis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead and click on solid liberals whenever you get on that left-right scale.
Solid
just read
liberals?
that. Yeah,
All right.
read that.
Highly educated and politically engaged, solid liberals hold consistently liberal views, whatever those are. They back a robust role for government and are strong advocates of the social safety net. Large majorities view the current economic system as unfair and see economic equality as a major problem. Broadly positive views of immigrants, 99% think being open to people is part of the nation's identity. More needs to be done to address racial discrimination and women's achievement. Support same-sex marriage. Believe homosexuality should be accepted. Nearly 2/3 identify as...
Indoctrinated would be a more
Yeah.
accurate term.
Yeah. If you need any assistance in knowing what Pew Research's political beliefs are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty funny they talk about solid liberals and all that, because if I recall correctly, like 200 years ago, if you were to tell people you were a liberal, that meant you were basically a libertarian. You believed in limited government. People, stay politically out of other people's political problems. And when you did engage with the rest of the world, it was only in the form of free trade and commerce.
They have a group called bystanders. Bystanders are on the sidelines of the political process, either by choice or because they are ineligible to vote. None are currently registered to vote. Most follow government and public affairs only now and then, 32%, or hardly at all, 32%.
Oh, ha ha ha! Funny pun, Stan. Funny pun.
Pew
You said
stinks,
Pew
yeah.
stinks. Yeah.
Hmm.
Pew doesn't stink. I'll tell you what stinks. Love. Yeah, you never heard the song?
Yeah.
Love stinks.
Love stinks. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we're done for today then. Anything before we sign off?
Nope.
Well, other than that, at work I'm being held against my will. Help me. I will
Fourth,
say that
anything? Oh, go ahead.
I was about to say, as much as I hate my job, I hate when people say it's like I'm being held against my will at work, and I'm just like, well, then why don't you quit?
Yeah. You can quit.
Yeah.
You can walk away at any time. They can't stop you.
Yeah. Contrary to popular belief, they can't hold you and say, oh, no, you can't quit. You got to give a 2 weeks notice. No, that's not true, And if they do try to say that, actually, I heard one person say, there was a story on Reddit about how I quit my job, and one person tried to do it. They tried to say, well, you can't leave. You got to finish your job that you worked for, and you got to give us your 2 weeks notice. And he replied saying, yeah, and if you do that, then I'm going to file a kidnapping charge against you.
Yep.
Because that's what it is. It's kidnapping.
It's purely just an etiquette thing.
Yeah.
All right. Anything to close off with, Fourth? Okay, not getting anything from him. All right, I'm just going to close it off again.
Sorry, it takes a minute for me to
Okay, I'm going out.
unmute my microphone.
Oh, okay.
I've just been very disappointed over the last, it seems to be an exponential trend of disappointment.
I know the feeling.
Just in the amount of vitriol I see between political parties. They're people don't understand each other's reasoning for having the political beliefs that they do. Like maybe they never did, but it just seems so much more worse and so much more intolerant of listening to the other side than it used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem.
Yeah, and it's
Uh,
been spurred on by the news media and the 24-hour news cycle, and everything has to be this massive big scandal, and everything has to be a big disaster and something we should be afraid of, and us versus them and everything. Yeah. That's how they do it. All right, well,
everything is
thanks
blown out of
guys for
proportion.
thanks guys for joining me. Thanks everyone who was in the chat, and thanks everyone, of course, who watched. If you think this is worthwhile and you want to encourage me to do more of it or make more videos, then just go to donate.bogosity.tv. All sorts of ways you can do it. We'll see you until next time. Stay strong and be free.